Hello everyone, this is Crota giving you a shoutcast between Jimpo and Adelscott here in the Naga Caverns. This is game 2 in a series that I am casting between these players. If you have not seen game 1, that is because it is on the Machinima Realm channel. Go ahead and check out their website. I'll probably try to include a link somewhere in here. Perhaps you can click down in here to go back to that one particular game if you have not seen it already. It was on Kulos Ravine, really good game. Now over here we have Adelscott spawning as the Protoss player, orange Protoss player on the north side of the Naga Caverns. Meanwhile, down over here we have Jimpo spawning as the purple Terran player. So it's going to be Terran versus Protoss once again. One of my more favorite matchups to cast just because I learned so much. Jimpo starting off with the standard supply depot over here on the, not over by the front door. So not trying to create any sort of wall off in this position, trying to create a more tighter base against the Protoss player. A tight base and generally reaps rewards just because the Protoss player it has a harder time trying to get in and trying to deal with a lot of damage. Back over here, we now see most likely a barracks being thrown down. So we're now going for an 11 racks as opposed to a 12 racks. So an 11 racks now being placed down as Adelscott now throwing down a gateway of his own and now perhaps going to do some scouting, making sure that there are no proxy barracks anywhere to be played. So both players really concerned about some sort of proxy play in this matchup. So yeah, you can see same thing with Jimpo. Jimpo moving out and trying to do the same exact thing as well. Naga Cavern pretty much known as a really large possible cheese map just because of the large amount of space over here and then the space back over here and then finally the space over here on both sides of the map. So now 2 minutes and 20 seconds into this in game as we now have this probe coming around, activating both Naga watchtowers in order to gain sight. Oh, there we go, activating that Naga watchtower and now moving out. We do see the gateway has been completed, and we should probably see a Cybernex core be laid down in just a moment. There we go. A little bit of an opening here. Not quite sure why that's there. Perhaps bad Protoss building placement. As now we finally see a probe come in. That probe will be forced to pull out in just a moment as a Marine's going to pop out. And will that Marine get the kill? That's the question. Oh, no attack move. And now Adelscott with that movement speed of 2.81 versus 2.25. That probe will be able to get out of there in a hurry. Back over here, we now see more chrono boosting from this Nexus, trying to get a stronger economy. SCV using that little bit of a fusion cutter, trying to take down the shields of this pylon. Really will not matter, as we now see a supply depot being built over here to the north side, making sure that there isn't any sort of drop play, trying to reveal sight there. Another one of the things that I noticed is the Terran buildings the SCV seems to be able to pull away before the animation is done being completed. I've noticed that on quite a few occasions, and you can actually start training or raising and lowering the supply depots as that little frame around it is being lowered. Now Jimpo training up a late Reaper, and that Reaper is going to be there mainly to do some scouting. Most likely Adelscott going to start training up some sentries. No, not training up a sentry, going for a gateway into a straight robotics facility. Normally I would have thought the Protoss player to get one sentry and try to close off that ramp on that front door, but not doing that. Instead, we do have one stalker sitting here, as now we have one Marine, one Marauder, and one SCV perhaps trying to do some sort of late push or some sort of early push, but it's just kind of a weird opening that I haven't quite seen before. We do see the Zealot now being chrono boosted, and now in comes this SCV. SCV deciding to pull out as soon as this Zealot engages. SCV now taking some of that damage, and the concussive shells on that Marauder finally engage. However, losing one SCV there, so SCV not really doing anything. And now Jimpo deciding to change up the strategy, now going for a command center. So expanding at a mere 5 minutes into this game, we'll be able to lift it off, and now finally getting that factory. Army-wise, 300 versus 225, and really curious as to how everything's going to work out in this particular situation. We do see one Reaper coming in here trying to do a lot of harassment. However, that Stalker will be able to take down that Reaper there. And Harvester count-wise, not too many units were taken down. Those probes were able to pull back. Perhaps 1 or 2 probes at most were taken down, as we finally have an Observer being trained. So a late Observer now moving out in order to gain some sight. It doesn't look like any sort of army units are going to be pushed, and Adelscott now trying to get that gateway is going to be a 2-gate and getting another pylon here. Army-wise, Adelscott will be able to warp in units very quickly now that the warp gates are in fact up. Warp gates reduce the building time of those units very quickly as a cooldown. I'll probably do a Q&A session to try to explain that in just a little bit. Back over here, we now see a barracks and a second barracks in play. No researching on the stim pack or the concussive shells yet, and we also see a bunker being placed right here. There is currently one observer walking around on the inside, doesn't want to gain or reveal too much. However, the the Observer did see this orbital command center being upgraded. Observer going to sit right here. Now here's a trick. If you're trying to figure out if there's an Observer in your base, use the scroll wheel. If you use the scroll wheel and move back and forth, then you can kind of guess where that Observer is, but you're not 100% sure, and you do not want to waste that scanner sweep. Go ahead and just use that Observer, use that wheel. Oh, it's gone. Back over here. So yeah, you can kind of see a little bit more of that distortion by doing that. Also, it also works if you try to do the left or right move. You can see that Observer a little bit better. Back over here, we do see one SCV now hanging around behind this brush, and now a bunker being placed on the low ground in order to protect this natural expansion. Salvage the bunker over here on the high ground. Production-wise, I do not see any engineering bay, and now SCVs being transferred over. So 13 SCVs being transferred over. Now going to perhaps throw down some refineries. SCV should most likely try to build a supply depot here in order to make sure there's no proxy play. And now there is still this SCV sitting over here as well. Nexus nearing completion, only needs about 10 more units of time to be completed. And now the army of Adelscott, very, very defensive, sitting in his base at this stage in the game. We do see one siege tank, two siege tanks with siege mode, already researched. Army-wise, 1,000 versus 975. Both players just trying to stay on top of their macro, sitting at 63 over 70 versus 60 over 76. So both sides almost neck and neck there. All of this off of a 2-gate, and now we see Colossus being trained. So Colossus currently being trained. No extended thermal lance research though, and currently now we see this pylon being warped in over here to gain sight. We do see one SCV now getting some information over here on all of these probes, and a second robotics facility being placed down. So I believe the SCV was able to gain sight. I don't know if he was actually able to click on the robotics facility. I don't believe so. He just saw something being warped in, and when you gain view of it, you cannot actually click on the building to actually see what it is. So all you see is a little blue ball. However, there are some Colossus. There is one Colossus, still no extended thermal lance research, and now a second bunkers being placed down. Jimpo throwing down a large number of supply depots, scout farms, essentially. From Warcraft 3, if you know the Terran, or if you know the human reference, yes. We now see an SCV trying to pull back, and a Stalker very, very smartly deciding not to find itself on the explosive end of a Punisher grenade that would have slowed it down. So 2 additional bunkers now being thrown down here. Those Marauders will have a range of 7 while inside, but that does not match the range of 9 on the extended thermal lance research that we currently see being researched by that robotics support bay, or the robotics bay here. We are also getting a forge, so we make it a level 1 weapons research in just a moment. Also getting the stim pack, and now both sides just macroing up very, very nicely. I like Jimpo's placing these farms all across the map. It really gives him a nice sense of where his opponent is, even though he doesn't have observers. So you can see all of these supply depots just scattered around. However, Adelscott doing a great job as well, just placing down pylons and observers in key positions, activating these Naga watchtowers. And Adelscott also has a very large amount of sight all across this map, and another pylon being placed here. So both sides very, very defensive. 2150 versus 2000. Still, both sides even arming. Still too early to call this game. We do have one Raven now in the air trying to give sight. Will that Raven move off to the north and detect that observer? He does detect that observer, and now Marines moving out, and that one poor observer does not fly away and gets shot down very quickly. Jimpo with one supply depot over here will be able to gain sight of any Nexus that tries to be warped in, and now an SCV perhaps going to try to set up a command center here. We should see these rocks at some point in time being destroyed as well. Army of Adelscott now moving out to take down these destructible rocks. This is something that I thought Jimpo would have done. Jimpo could have placed a planetary fortress here, and it is very, very hard to put pressure on this semi/choke point if there was a planetary fortress here, and also guard these high-yield minerals. We now see an SCV. SCV still does not see that there is a pylon over here to the north. So we'll see if there's any sort of warp in play. Currently warping in 3 additional gateways, now upgrading into the warp gate. And now we see more mass immortals being trained. Level 1 weapons upgrade nearing completion. And now Adelscott just really playing a very strong macro game and may be able to simply walk very, very easily into this position here. The Terran player does have a decent amount of siege tanks. Yes, 6 siege tanks and 5 of them in siege mode. And now we see Marine Marauder Medevac moving out. However, I believe these Marine Marauder Medevac will be spotted by this one pylon just because this SCV does not see it. He wants to avoid this Naga watchtower. However, will he be revealed? Yeah, revealed by these Stalkers. The Stalkers may try to shoot it down, and now we should see that this pylon quickly catches sight sight of these medevacs. The army is going to go ahead and try to return. We should, seeing some stalkers now being warped in over here, and this medevac drop will be failed and just spoiled here. No, medevac trying to pull back. No stalker blink. Unable to get any shots off there, and now we see some colossi coming in to join in on this fight. Those medevacs now moving in. Those medevacs do have a pretty decent move speed. Stalkers may be able to blink very, very quickly, and now they're going to quickly find these scouting farms, and one medevac getting shot down, a second medevac down to 52 hit points, but no stalker blink. Back over here, we do see one SCV, and now Adelscott getting a 500 mineral swing on that fight, losing that one medevac there. So that was a pretty heavy loss, and now this medevac will need to be repaired. It's currently sitting at 52 hit points. Weapon upgrade wise, only 0-0 so far. No upgrades at all for the Terran army. However, Protoss sitting on 1-0 upgrades, and now getting an additional nexus at this high yield mineral location, getting some photon cannons as well, and also getting that all important Twilight Council. So with that Twilight Council, we may get the necessary size storm to deal with this infantry ball here. Now we should be getting more and more units. I'm surprised that I don't see any Vikings. With the number of Colossus out, Vikings are going to be a very strong counter to those Colossus. And now those siege tanks currently just in siege mode sitting here. We have one Immortal having that hardened shield. Will only take a maximum of 10 damage here, as now we see a Jimpo finally trying to take down these backdoor destructible rocks. Probes being transferred to this high yield mineral location. Will mine return, and then that nexus will be completed. Back over here, the stalkers at this high yield mineral location still sitting in this location, and I'm kind of surprised that there are no Naga or sensor towers being placed down. Sensor towers on this map is very critical as well for a Terran player. Terran players are really able to gain sight and gain just know where that Protoss army is throughout this game. Harvester wise, we see Adelscott sitting at 1600 versus 1400, and Jimpo has more harvesters. However, he is beyond saturation at this location, only 6 mineral patches, so you only need 18 plus 6, 18 plus 6, 24 in order to completely saturate this location. That is more than, just 24 just on these mineral patches when you only need 18. Now, are these units going to push in? Yeah, now pushing through. Siege tanks not in siege mode and catching these units all off guard, and those Colossus are just going to be able to run through. Are we going to get enough stim pack? We do not have any Ravens. Oh, we do have 1 point defense drone, and those units trying to finally pull back. A 4225 versus a 4600, so Jimpo getting the necessary siege up just in the nick of time in order to try to push back this attack. We are getting the level 1 weapons upgrade, and now this Observer out of siege mode once again, going to try to push. Stalkers do not, they do have blink, so we'll be able to blink within that 0 distance. Why aren't they blinking to try to just soak up some of that damage there? Marauders and Colossus continue to push, and Adelscott just throwing everything, trying to attack move into this position here, and really just getting caught out of position. A really bad choice of an aggression there by Adel. Stay tuned for part 2 of this replay between Jimpo and Adelscott here in the Naga Caverns.